You have to go. You understand, right? Thank you.
I don't give a fuck.
Hi! 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 Hi!
This stream is sponsored by Noise Fighters, so if you're in the market for night vision accessories, whether that be their Pano Bridge, J-Arm, or even their new Cliffhang IR Riser that's designed for your red dot magnifier and even your laser aiming module, then go ahead and check them out. Once again, that is Noise Fighters. Now, if you need actual night vision devices or other optics, you can also check out Optics Force. They sent out this AGM Gen 2 Plus unit that I've been playing around with. Review coming on that shortly, but you can go ahead and check out both of them at the links in the description or pinned comment. Good evening, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day today. Today, we're going to be talking about all things SIG and their 320 debacle. Now, we'll get into more of that later on, but I'm actually not particularly against SIG 320s. They may not be my favorite handgun, but I'm not a SIG hater, let's say. But before we get into that, I do actually need to thank you guys. Thank you for being so generous with the streams and with the videos. The reason I say with the videos is because I have, in the last couple months, been sent some absolutely insane pieces to play around with. Right here behind me, we have a LMT 12.5 that was sent in by a gentleman who wanted me to do a review on it. Funny story with that. Either LMT or D. Wilson did not install stuff correctly. So we'll have a PSA Jackal style video on that soon enough. But QC issues be everywhere, apparently. Now, on top of it, you might also notice is a LCAN, which Andrew Vachon, he sent me a LCAN, and behind me, you probably can't see it, is an ACOG back there somewhere to play around with. So you guys have been extremely generous with me personally. It is a absolutely amazing thing. I can't thank you enough for what you guys have done for me, and it allows me to not have to worry about companies whatsoever, which is quite nice. But with that, thank you out of the way, guys. Let's go ahead and get into this, and of course, bring Gary on. How are you doing, Gary?
I'm doing all right. It's a wonderful July day. How you doing today?
Good, good. It's been a good day so far. Better for me than the guy in Sioux Falls this morning, which we'll talk about that a little later on as well. All right. So let's go ahead and get into the 320 business. And can I pull this up? Perfect. So for those of you who are not aware, for the last, how long? 3, 4, 5 years or so, we've had the SIG 320 cases been going on.
It started with not being drop safe, and then they fixed that.
Right. And that was an actual thing that they admitted to, that it was not drop safe. And then they offered a free upgrade to people who had those original models.
Right. And now they're going off in holsters. So that's what this one's about.
Apparently. Right.
Allegedly.
Now, To go through the
Wait,
background,
I
we're
don't
going
need to
go
say
through-
allegedly, do I? They lost the lawsuit. I can say they're going off in holsters.
Technically, yeah, but they're going to appeal it, so they could win on appeal. We don't know anything about that yet, which is why they lose in court for now. But we have no idea what they're going to do at some point in the future. So, starting off with this article, gunmaker Sig Sauer found liable in shooting accident. A Georgia jury concluded that the company had failed to adequately warn consumers about the risk of its most popular gun, the P320, unintentionally discharging. A Georgia jury has found the New Hampshire-based gunmaker Sig, now they weren't always, but they are now, liable in the shooting of a man who claimed his P320 pistol fired when he did not pull the trigger. The jury also awarded him $2.35 million in damages. Now, just out of curiosity, if I were to offer you, let's just say $2 million to shoot you in a non-life-ending way, would you accept it?
I got to think about it.
$2 million, and you
I gotta
won't die.
think. I mean, possibly. I'm not ruling it out.
I think there's a lot of people who would say yes.
I got to think about it. I'm not saying no.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, I would consider it too. It's like, I'm going to shoot you in the arm or the leg or something. You're not going to die, but it's going to be extremely painful. And at the end of it, you get $2 million. Now, This article came out. This is by Champa Barton. This came out June 24th, so about 10 days ago or so at this point. But this is fairly recent. Now,
this is also from the Trace and their massive gun grabber rag. So
anything that yeah, a lot of these guys are saying yes that they would. Any article from a big website that we're going to pull up, you have to imagine it's left-leaning. So they're almost always going to, without question, blame SIG. You know.
Well, the Trace is explicitly anti-gun. Like that's what they're funded by Bloomberg. They're
right.
Like I think every town funds them as well. So
Really?
like they're explicitly gun control.
Mm. Well, I mean, I can pull it up from a different article as well, but this is kind of going over the basics of it. Basically, on June 20th, jurors in the Atlanta federal court found unanimously on all counts for Robert Lang. So that is all 12 on all counts. That Robert Lang of Georgia, after deliberating for roughly 9 hours, which is like not crazy long, but also not the shortest deliberation ever, they concluded not only that Sig Sauer defectively designed the P320, that's kind of, I don't know if 12 random people can actually decide that, because this is a incredibly technical thing to understand, like design and engineering, and 12 random people have to listen to arguments by obviously the defense and the prosecution and then come to a conclusion. But I feel like that's something that 12 untrained people would almost never be able to properly determine.
I'm not going to take Sig's side here, but nobody's expert witness. I have all the documents for the court case pulled up.
Yeah, we're going to go over the actual stuff as well.
Nobody's expert witness actually like inspected the firearm and determined how it was possible. They like inspected a random P320. So, well, at least Sig's expert witness inspected a random P320. So,
right. Well, and that's always the thing with expert witnesses on either side. They often come to drastically different opinions, and they're, both supposedly experts in their field, but that's just, of course, you're going to try and find somebody who's going to side with you on that thing. But, I mean, if you look at the numbers, apparently more than 100 people have alleged that their P320s fired without the trigger being pulled, and at least 80 people had been injured in the shootings, which is a lot. So even if that's a large number to just blame on, let's say, bad handling, because yeah, people shoot themselves all the time accidentally. But I mean, that seems like a lot, and I'm not sure if Glocks or other things have had this sort of history as well, but the number at least seems high for them to allegedly accidentally, or not accidentally, just go off on their own. And yeah, there's like 14 other cases that are currently going through for and different stages of litigation that will some of them might eventually lead to trial as well, and some of them will probably get settled out of court or just go away in general. So apparently, Lang was carrying the most up-to-date version of the P320 released after the company modified the design in 2017. So this was post the original drop safe issues, when he attempted to remove the holstered weapon from his belt after returning home from work one night in December 2018. As part of his usual routine, Lang loosened his belt and reached for the weapon's grip. That was when he says it fired, still fully secured in its holster and with his fingers flat against the holster's belt clip away from the trigger. Now, does this mention specifically what holster model it was? Because I do imagine that, if you're using, let's say, the wrong holster or a holster that doesn't fit properly, or the old Serpa style holsters where you actually have a thing going inside of the holster itself.
I've dug through all of the documents that have been available through Pacer. Nobody specifically calls out the manufacturer of the holster. What I do get, though, is it is a Kydex inside the waistband holster.
Really?
Yes.
So it was just a straight piece of plastic, nothing inside of the trigger or the trigger guard, anything like that.
No, and we'll get into it when I pull up the core documents. But like, SIG is claiming that a piece of fabric got into the holster,
which is possible.
But like, the guy was wearing an undershirt, right, between the grip of his firearm and his body. And where the exit hole is on his shirt, nothing could have possibly gotten in there. So,
because there's an exit hole on his exterior shirt, right?
No, there's an exit hole on the interior shirt.
Oh, really? Okay. So even though he shot himself in the top of the thigh, there was still enough shirt in there for a bullet to go through?
Right.
Okay. Interesting. And Mr. Doverfield says the Alec Baldwin defense actually worked. I never would have guessed. Exactly. Always blame the gun, always blame the equipment if you can. Now, most of the money awarded as damages is intended to compensate Lang for past and future pain and suffering. The remainder, about $50,000, will cover the medical expenses he incurred as a result of his injury, including those from a 3-day stint in the ICU after the wound became infected. That sounds awful. I've never been shot. I never intend to get shot, hopefully. But that does sound like a miserable experience. In 2022, SIG won a jury trial in a lawsuit alleging a different defect in the P320, and at least 12 other cases against the company have been dismissed. So it looks like they have a pretty darn good track record of beating these cases. However, at least at this point, only one has actually gone against them. Now, again, when you're dealing with 12 randoms, you could, just by product of going through this at least 12 or 13 times at this point, end up with a, quote unquote, bad batch that decide against you, even if the evidence is in your favor. And that's kind of the downside of a jury of your peers. Now, 6 Hour does have a response to this, which did come out the day after, which their response is very important because, of course, they have not only government contracts, but a lot of law enforcement contracts. And so when they publicly lose a case, it is very important for them to maintain a not admit fault in these and say that they're going to appeal, even if there's no chance of them winning, because they want to make sure that they look as much in the right as they can. So I'll go over their response. So June 21, 2024, this is the day after the decision came through. Sig Sauer strongly disagrees with the verdict in the case of Lang v. Sig Sauer Inc. and will be appealing the decision on multiple grounds. Sig Sauer does not believe that the plaintiff has met his burden to prove the 320 model pistol was designed defectively or negligently as claimed. Now, that is a very, very hard thing to prove, which is why I'm surprised that that's how they won the case, is by proving that the design was defective or negligently done, which sounds like a very tough hill to get over. There are no facts on the record that support Mr. Lang's discharge claim was the result of anything other than his own negligent handling causing him to pull the trigger on the P320 pistol. Plaintiff and both his experts testified that they do not know what pulled the trigger or how the trigger was pulled, and they did not attempt to conduct any testing to confirm how the trigger could have been pulled other than by Mr. Lang's own finger. Now, that's what SIG's saying, but I don't think that's Lang's defense. They're not saying that the trigger was pulled. They're saying that the gun went off without the trigger being pulled. So I don't think they really are concerned with what or how the trigger could have been pulled, only that the gun went off on its own. Am I right about that?
Let's see here. One of these guys says that SIG's failure to integrate an external manual safety into the design of the P320 was improper and unreasonably dangerous, rendering the firearm defective and unreasonably dangerous, and was the subject cause of unintentional discharge. Basically what it ends up boiling down to is SIG makes the only striker fired handgun without a nubbin on the trigger that you have to depress before the trigger gets pulled, and that's essentially what Lang's attorney was arguing in court, was the fact that there's nothing there to prevent the trigger from moving is what caused the firearm to discharge. I don't know how they got there, but
so they are stating that the defense is saying that the trigger was pulled, but they don't know how.
That's what they're saying. That's what they're saying, but that's not at all what Lang is saying. Like, so that's what the attorney is saying, but that's not what the guy is saying. And I'm going to listen to the guy more than the attorney, because the attorney literally.
Well, he's going to try and make it sound as good as possible, right? So in this case, the plaintiff, Mr. Lang, initially admitted to the police that he had accidentally discharged his gun while pulling it out of the holster. He then later changed his story, stating that the firearm was discharged without a trigger pull. However, the plaintiff's story notably changed again after hiring trial experts who agreed that the 6-hour P320 could not discharge without the trigger being pulled. The design of the 6-hour P320 model pistol is truly innovative and safe, with numerous related patents, including several relating to safety mechanisms. It is among the most tested, proven, and successful handguns in recent history, with versions being selected as the official sidearm of the US, Canadian, Australian, and Danish militaries, among many other military and law enforcement organizations worldwide. 6 Hour is extremely proud of our long history of producing high-quality firearms and our unwavering dedication to safety. Insert video of the SIG Cross going off on ejection, which is a bolt-action rifle that, funnily enough, also had a random discharge that it would objectively go off, and then they had a recall on that. So doesn't look that great for SIG, with the fact that they have other, what should I say, new and innovative firearms that also kind of go off on their own, allegedly.
Allegedly. I mean, no, that actually happened on video. So nothing fancy.
Yeah, I know, exactly. It did go off without the trigger being depressed, and they admitted that, and they fixed it, just like the initial drop safe issues that they had back in pre-2017 when they fixed it. Now, Hop says, and don't forget that nobody who NDs is ever incentivized to be honest about it due to the social professional penalties, or in this case, medical bills. Yeah, so we know that there was at least $50,000 in medical bills, not to mention being, I imagine, out of work for X amount of time. Not to mention you're a police officer, so it looks really bad when you shoot yourself. We've all seen videos of, you've seen the guy where he's in a classroom for some reason showing off a handgun, and he shoots himself in the leg. The police officer, he shoots himself in the leg in a classroom full of like 10 to 12-year-old kids or something like that. Have you seen that video?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And this is what
it looks really bad. Now, something that I do want to say, if after he shot himself and he goes to the hospital and he's talking to cops, I would grant a little bit of leeway there, changing his story, because he was probably very high stress and he's just thinking, hey, I must have pulled the trigger when drawing it out. And then later you think back, maybe things get a little bit more clear, or maybe you get incentivized to change your story later on. We don't really know, but sometimes there's a difference between the statements immediately after an event, and if you get like just a couple days away and there's a little bit more clarity there, you can actually kind of work through what happened. So changing your story once isn't that big of a deal. When it changes 2, 3, 4, 5 times, that's when something had to have been wrong. You were relying on one of those times. Now, Andrew Bichon, thank you very much, sir, comes in with the $49.99. Absolutely amazing. He says, I have many issues with the P320 handgun, and none of them are the alleged drop safe / discharge claims. When someone shoots themselves, the gun is always to blame without fail. The plaintiffs risk nothing by suing and have every incentive to do so. No, in general, I also agree with that. We haven't gone over our personal opinions of the SIG P320. Have you ever shot one or used one?
I've played around with one in a gun shop. I think it's got the best striker fire trigger ever. Like, it's amazing. Okay. I would consider getting one if, well, I mean, I can't get one now, but it was a consideration for getting one once upon a time. I'm not going to do it. I can't get one now, but if I could, I might think about it.
Right, you can't get one in... You can get a 320 in Washington still, can't you?
What's the point of getting a 320 in Washington right now? It would be completely neutered and...
lame.
Now,
for me, I've shot a few different 320s. It's not the worst handgun that I've ever shot, but it's kind of my least favorite of the big three. I prefer Glocks and Smith & Wessons over the SIG 320. There are so many different variants of the 320, though, that you can get like a really nice top-of-the-line one. The best 320 that I've ever shot was a custom one, which was all done up, with like comps and, super nice frames and whatnot. Those are done by FDEZ, I want to say, FDEZ. I don't know how you pronounce their name, but I've shot some 320s that were really nice, but the basic models, not my favorite, kind of my least favorite of the big three, but I've never owned one. Just whenever I'm out shooting at events or other people's handguns, really not my favorite. Nothing has ever enticed me to buy one, but I wouldn't say that they were necessarily awful to shoot, just not my favorite.
They got the aesthetics of a P226, and that's always nice. So,
yeah, I mean, I was never into like classic handguns because my first handgun was a Smith & Wesson SD9 VE, which is like not a great handgun. And so I never shot a lot of the classic handguns until like I had already been shooting for 2 or 3 years. So I don't have any sort of nostalgia for them or their looks. So when somebody shows me like an older SIG or some of the older like Wonder 9s or whatnot, I'm kind of like, I don't care. It's not really my thing. Now, Eric the Red says, for every one claim that the 320 is trash, again, I wouldn't call it trash. It's just not my favorite. 1,000 others say that they love the 320. Now, I actually don't get that much love for it either. I know that there's, out of the people that I know that carry a full-size gun, none of them are 320s. Of the people that I know that have a gun belt, none of them are carrying 320s. It's all Glocks or Smith & Wessons. I don't know a single person in my group who shoots a 320. So I don't get a lot of love for it. I don't necessarily get that much hate for it. But, yeah. Now, Barnes says there's literally video evidence of them discharging in holster. John McAfee, the Delta guy, has seen them going off by themselves when nobody was depressing the trigger. Many examples. So I would say if there's got to be some truth to it, I would imagine that would be my guess if I were to take a bet. I would say probably 90% chance there's at least a little bit of truth to some of the claims, but if we go through them individually, I think you are going to find a lot of BS, of course, because nobody wants to be the guy that accidentally shot themselves. Now, do you want to go ahead and bring up your stuff that we're going to go through?
Yeah, sure. So I've got the deposition here, or I've got part of the deposition here, so we can see what Lang is actually alleging here. Where does it start? Here we go. So he says, coming out of the living room, as he's walking towards that direction, stops, watches Jeopardy for a second, goes into his alcove to remove his firearm, puts his hand down like he normally does, loosens the belt, goes to attempt to take the entire holster out. I don't know about you, but that's what I do. Like, gun stays in the holster unless I'm shooting it. Pushed on the slide, and right as my finger got to the belt clip on the holster, the firearm discharged. Allegedly. This is what he's saying.
Right. This is
now,
his testimony. You can read this
now,
word for word. There's nothing bad about this.
Now, that being said, I've seen there's a guy in Eastern Washington. I'm trying to remember his channel name, but he's got a small YouTube channel where the same sort of similar thing happened, where he reached down to draw his firearm, his hand hit the back of the slide, and it discharged and bounced off of the plate that his holster is connected to.
Mm-hmm.
So I've seen it. I've seen some of the YouTube videos about it before. It says I was wearing slacks and a polo shirt and an undershirt. It's not very comfortable to carry inside the waistband without an undershirt on. And he mentions, where does he mention it? He mentions that based on where the bullet hole was in the bottom of the undershirt, that it couldn't have actually gotten tucked up inside the holster. So,
right, because it was still underneath the holster at that point, so it couldn't have come around and pulled the trigger. Is what he's saying, right?
Right, that's what he's saying. And the police officers in the initial report are saying that the firearm discharged inside the holster as well. So,
now couldn't they?
If we go, I'm sorry.
Well, what I was going to say is, couldn't they check the holster?
Yeah.
Right? Couldn't they tell where the gun residue started from? Because if you fire a round in the bottom of the holster, I imagine there's going to be a pretty clear area where you can tell where the gun actually got off. So, for instance, if the burn marks were lower than where it would have been if he was drawing it out to where he could actually touch the trigger in some way. Like, I don't know if that came up during trial, although you would have to test that against like 10 other Kydex holsters done in basically the exact same way. So that would be a really hard thing to actually narrow down.
Actually, here we go. This is SIG's expert witness here. SIG's expert witness examined the markings on the exterior surfaces of the holster and placed a bullet trajectory rod in the barrel of the holster and fully holstered the pistol, which showed that the pistol could not have been fully holstered at the time of discharge.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, so they're doing that. Very cool. So
I don't know how
that
well I don't know if I believe that necessarily.
Okay, but at least what they're saying is they are saying that it was fired while it was partially out. Now, did they say how far it was out?
No, they don't say how far it was out at all. But as I said, I'm not sure that I believe that because.
Well, this is their expert witness, right?
Yeah, who's to say that the holster didn't deform during firing? Do
we know the make and model of the holster itself?
I can't find it. All I know is that it's Kydex and that it's inside the waistband. So it's not. I saw somebody say something about them not liking Safariland holsters or whatever, but that's not this one.
Okay. Because this was a inside the waistband style holster. So it was some name your Kydex company out there.
Right. Tier 1 concealed or T-Rex arms or whatever.
Right.
They do mention that ICE, the immigration services, had 12 unintentional discharges of a P320. Now, something
again that we run into the problem there of how well trained are these ICE agents, and how do I say this? So let's say a Glock is slightly more safe than a 320 because it does have that trigger bar. So it's going to remove X amount of negligent discharges, which let's say that these are negligent discharges just for the sake of argument. The SIG P320, because it doesn't have that, with the less trained personnel, might actually be have a slightly higher chance of going off negligently, not on its own, but negligently. And then, of course, they're just blaming that because they're doing the same thing with their SIGs that they were doing with their Glocks, but because Glocks has basically a dummy bar in their trigger, they're not accidentally going off like the SIG, which does not. So they're both being handled improperly, but when you remove that extra dummy bar from the Glock and give them a SIG, now they're having these accidental discharges, but it's because the people were always retards.
That's fair too. people be stupid. Especially if your only firearms experience is like in your job, where you're probably not going to be discharging your weapon on a regular basis anyways. Like, I hate to say it, but I was in the army. Nobody there was any good with guns. Nobody in my unit was any good with guns at all.
What, 5% of your job, 1% of your job? For most of the people there, most of the time you're doing a vast amount of other tasks.
Yeah.
I feel like Hop is getting called out in the chat because Hop does believe that the B5 is a bad stock, but I actually like the B5 quite a bit. I'm with Barnes on this one.
What? But
we're just talking about a B5 stock.
Okay. I mean, why would you do that when the BCM1 exists? The BCM1 is really, really good.
I mean, but stocks is its own, like, that's a whole, we could do a tier list on stocks. That's what we could do.
Yeah, we should do a tier list on stocks. All right. You know what? Next week, you and Hob can do a tier list on stocks.
Oh gosh. I don't know if I could do that. Brandon Masters, 365 is objectively the best carry handgun, and I wouldn't be mad if it were the only carry option from SIG. Dude, SIG has released so many different variations of the 365, because we got the 365, 365 XL, and then we have the, what's the new one that they just came out with? The Fuse, and then you have the X Macro, I want to say, and then the X Macro Comp, or are those the same ones? But they have a lot of different variations of theirs. See you, Richard. Andrew Vachon for the 199 Magpul DT, the dual tension, I want to say, Master Race. I haven't gone in there and actually picked up the new Magpul stocks, but I probably should. I've heard good things, so I probably should. Will W says, I wouldn't carry a P320 without an aftermarket Glock-style trigger safety. Interesting.
I mean, I think you could probably get away with it with a manual safety. The manual safeties on the SIGs aren't bad. They're not bad.
I guess I've never trained with them. So I was past that generation. The first handgun that I shot that had a manual safety was, I borrowed my mother-in-law's P365 XL, and that had a manual safety on it, and that was, well, maybe a 1911 some point. But yeah, I have almost no experience with handguns with safeties, so I prefer just the dummy bar in the middle of the trigger. That's what does it for me.
You never got around to playing with the Ruger 2245s?
Nope, don't think so. I'm not much of a handgun guy. I currently own 2 handguns. That's it. Glock 17 and then my Canic that I carry. Which after I did that review on that, they started blowing up on other people, so I kind of feel bad about that. Julian comes in with the $20 and says, B5 stocks suck. Hop is correct. The Magpul DT is the Kang.
The answer is no, Barnes. I would not.
Yeah, I don't think I would either. But yeah, I actually like the B5 stock. I don't have any problems with it. I have one like right back there on that like $3,000 gun. I don't have a problem with it. I think it's fine. It does the stock thing. It feels nice. It's light. Has a nice cheek weld. But no, I don't know. If there was like a 0.1% chance of the gun randomly going off, I would probably not carry it.
Hey, John, you want to do the advertisement?
Oh, we 30 minutes in?
Yeah,
totally, we can. I forgot.
35 minutes in. Got to pay the bills.
Right, so, well, pay something with it. But no, Gun Slaps. He is very kindly sponsoring the streams, and he has merch and stickers and stuff like that. And he also has a very funny Instagram page that I showed off in the beginning, which you should definitely follow because it is, again, quite funny. Now, you can use code FT10 to save some money. And as you can tell, they have some very high quality, very articulate responses to, different people that are around. So if that suits your fancy...
The stickers are fantastic quality. The patches are great. I've been working with the guy for years and years and years at this point. Like 4 or 5 years at this point. He's awesome. If you got something and he doesn't have it, send him a message on Instagram. He'll see what he can do about making it.
Yeah, but very, very tactical patches. Go ahead and check them out. Once again, use code FT10. And I want to say that they're actually having, a 4th of July sale, 17.76% off of everything, which is, of course, extremely based. Thanks to those guys for sponsoring the stream. And, of course, you can check out their Instagram because it is quite funny. Now, this is another thing that I pulled up, but I don't know if we want to go through this article. It's basically just another round of P320 lawsuits. There's 7 more gun owners coming out against the 320 saying that they fired without trigger pull. Now, I'm not sure if this is just a case of you get a public win, and so now everybody's going to dogpile you, and you're going to get everybody coming at trying to get their share of the pie as well, because again, somebody did just win $2.3 million off of it with $50,000 in medical expenses.
Well, they've had lawsuits. The SIG has been fighting lawsuits from what was the last one that I remember? Canada. RCMP was suing SIG for them going off without being intended to. So, I mean, it's not a new thing.
I mean, they've had this problem for, almost a decade at this point of models coming out. Now, I wonder who is their marketing guy or who is doing the contracts for these, because they have so many contracts with, as they even mentioned in their response, so many different places. Like the amount of different governments and police contracts that they have is absolutely ridiculous. And so whoever they have doing their contract negotiations must be absolutely insane. Just because of how
they've won every single government contract that they've been put up to.
I mean, they have to be paying off everybody, because they win some contracts that they should absolutely not win, and they just happen to get them like every single time. That, or they are just undercutting everyone else, and quality is suffering a little bit, which could be part of that. Ben Bowditch says, I don't own and won't own any SIG products until they publicly acknowledge the design problem with the 320. But that'll never happen. However, I still recognize their innovation and product quality. So SIG will never acknowledge a problem with the SIG P320 because they have too many active contracts with it. If they go out and say, you know what, guys, there was a design flaw with it, and we've sold millions of them, right? And then they back out of the room flipping the bird to everybody. They would never do that. Well, they are never going to admit fault.
If they admit that maybe they should have either had a different style trigger or a manual safety, I think that would be different, because then they still get to keep the military contracts, which are the big ones.
Well, yeah, but they simply can't acknowledge that they designed it defectively, even if they did, which I'm not saying is the case, but they never could, because then they would literally be telling all of those governments and agencies that, hey, we knowingly sold you pistols that had a higher than 0% chance of going off on their own. Which, I mean, that opens them up to a whole slew of lawsuits. And honestly, if they did that, they would probably lose the right to bid for future contracts. Because there have been companies that have been kicked off of lists for not making their quotas or for supplying substandard quality of what they were supposed to do, because these guys do have very strict guidelines that they have to maintain to keep these contracts. Because if at any point they don't meet their quotas or criteria in whatever contracts, because I don't know what these are, but if they do not meet their criteria, they can be kicked off, and they would have to go through another round of testing and try and figure out which one is best. Gunslap says the SIG Hammer is greater than the SIG Striker. In general, I would agree with that. Again, I don't have that much experience with SIG handguns in general, but they're just not my favorite. The Magic Prepper, there is a reason there have been unannounced generational changes over the years. Yes, they just call them rolling improvements.
I'm
That
glad
is
you
what
could
they-
make it.
Yeah, it's good to see everybody in the chat. Yeah, but that's why they call them rolling improvements, not, hey, we're fixing the mistake that the previous, X number of thousands had.
Okay, so the question is, would you buy a Gen 1 SIG if there was a
Nope.
chance
Nope.
that you'd get $2.3 million out of it?
Oh, no. Because I wouldn't shoot myself. Right. I don't think I would, because the guns usually are never ever pointed at me. Right. I mean, that's a pretty easy way to not shoot yourself. But
if
I
you're
just would never
carrying
buy
it-
Yeah,
if
but
you're
then it's in a
carrying
holster.
it-
It's different. It's different.
Yeah,
It's in a
okay, well,
holster.
this one was in a holster. Is it that different?
We don't know that. We don't know that. It might have been on its way out of the holster with his finger on it. Well, we have no idea. We have no idea what happened. But the jury says that his finger was not on the trigger, or he didn't pull it. So, but no, I would never buy a SIG Gen 1 handgun. I don't think I would ever do it. If somebody sent me one, I would definitely do testing on it, but I don't think I would go out, especially as like a carry piece or like a duty gun. I don't think I would ever buy a Gen 1 anything. Like I wouldn't go back and buy a Gen 1 Glock, right? I mean, I have a Gen 3 and that's what I use, but I would go out and buy a Gen 5 or, name your other handgun model, Smith & Wesson M&P 2.0. Those have been really good. Actually, you hear almost, at least I don't, personally, I haven't heard a lot of complaints about Smith & Wesson M&Ps in general, and they're a gun that has gone through a lot of changes over the years as well, from different triggers to different frames and different things that they've done with the M&P series. And that's, if I didn't have Glocks, I would probably go with Smith & Wesson, because those are some of my favorites.
I mean, I can't argue with that. That was my first
voluntary
handgun.
upgrade.
It's like,
What was your first handgun?
my first handgun was an M&P. So, I mean, aside from the fact that the hinge trigger is just trash.
See, my take on that is super controversial. I shot one of the last M&P 2.0s with the hinge trigger, and I had it for a long time. I loved that thing. It was, for whatever reason, its functional accuracy with me was really good compared to other guns that had like objectively better triggers. For whatever reason, I always just shot really good with that M&P with the hinge trigger. I would never say that it's the best trigger on the market, but for whatever reason, it worked well enough for me. But their new triggers are probably objectively better.
I mean, it just feels bad.
Again, yeah, to me, it wasn't that bad. But also, you got to remember, I started with the Smith & Wesson SD9VE, and those triggers were horrible. They were like 11, 12 pounds, and it was like there was no defined wall. They basically broke at the very back. And so it was like shooting a New York Glock, basically. It's not fun to shoot. Yeah, it was not fun to shoot. Hop says the Walther P99 AS and PPQ have a fully pre-cocked striker, and it was easy to get the striker to drop with a hard impact, but the FPB prevented discharge. So this is not my area of expertise, like old handguns, or these aren't even that old of handguns, but it's just not my genre of expertise. I don't really shoot old handguns. I don't really know much about them. So what is it about the P320 that is causing the striker to drop and the FPB to be defeated? It used to be the trigger issue, but now what's doing it?
I wonder. The
Nobody.
common
Well, that's the
denominator-
thing. Even in the lawsuits, no one has actually been able to show like conclusively what the problem is. Am I wrong about that?
No, I think you're right. But the common denominator amongst all of the lawsuits that I can tell right now is that you're putting your hand on the back of the slide. So I'm wondering if like maybe some sort of rearward pressure on the back plate does something. I don't know.
Well, or maybe it's even simpler than that. Maybe there are X amount of strikers or FPVs that aren't machined properly, right?
Mhm.
And so then some of them find their way into like law enforcement guns or contract guns or something like that. And so there actually is just an actual parts failure, something like that, right? Where
As
it's not
opposed to-
designed where it's not designed improperly, but it's an actual parts issue. Could be another
And-
possibility.
And you're not going to see the same problem in the military because they all have manual safeties.
Do all the contract guns have manual safeties?
Well, all the military ones do. It's
All
a
the military
requirement.
ones
Yeah.
Okay.
So, hey, I'm gonna get hydrated real quick. I'll be right back.
No problem. No problem. Mr. Deverfield says, I agree. M&P is better than Glock. Amazing triggers in the Gen 2. The M&P 2.0s, if I didn't already have so many Glock parts, holsters, because the holsters is one of the most annoying things, right? Because I got my carry holsters. I have multiple duty holsters. And then it's like, well, now you have to go and get an M&P 2.0. That's like $500-$600 for whatever model that you want. You got to spend another at least $150 on your duty holster, and then you have to spend $70-$60 on your carry holster, and then you got to spend probably $200+ on magazines, and you're looking at like $1,000 just to switch to a different manufacturer. And I'm somebody that doesn't have a lot of these extra magazines floating around for different manufacturers that I don't obviously own, because I haven't been into guns all that long. So compared to somebody who's been doing it for 20 years and he already has all the extra stuff just laying around, for me, it's a much bigger investment to get into. But if I could do it again, I probably would go with M&P 2.0s. Probably just a 4-inch version. How unlucky would you have to be to get the 320 with the out-of-spec striker and sear and an out-of-spec firing pin block? I mean, it happened on the SIG Cross, so, but that was obviously a different design. But you win the unlucky lottery occasionally, and yeah, he says the zero luck build, yeah. And again, I'm not sure what combination of parts failures it would have to be, because it's possible that only the firing pin block could have to have an issue with it. And it's also possible, like depending on the designs, if you grab the gun and let's say the slide is locked in place via the holster, and then you apply pressure to the back and you move the frame in a different way than the slide, depending on how your holster works, that you could actually move something internally just enough with a defective part that you could get it to go off. Again, this is purely conjecture. We all roll a 1 sometimes. Very true. The manual safety wouldn't do anything to prevent this, since it blocks the movement of the trigger. But again, yeah, you're right. The theory is that the trigger pull isn't causing it, right? Because nobody's saying that they're pulling the trigger. Nobody's admitting that. Everybody's saying that the gun is going off on its own. So if the safety is just a trigger safety and not also like an internal safety or something that blocks the firing pin, like what you already have in the handgun to begin with, then yeah, it's not the trigger pull is not the issue.
So I am the live super chat right now, and I have the question of if let's see, how should I say this correctly? Why not just become the testing subject for all of these guns to see if that would rack in any dough?
What do you mean? Be the designated tester? The designated beta tester?
Yeah.
I mean, apparently somebody at SIG is doing that. There is a team
I mean,
of
even if
at
you
SIG
are
that
not
supposed to be doing
paid,
that.
right, then at least you could get paid for like the lawsuit.
Go to bed. Go to bed. Go to bed. Move.
I mean,
I feel like SIG does it a lot
here.
cheaper
Go
by
away.
putting that on the Gen 1 buyers, because there has been a lot of that sort of thing. Irradiated says another reason that a manual safety is useless. XL
Can't have shit
Tomahawk
out here.
says, I know, he was going to take your spot, man. I think he was doing a good job. XL Tomahawk says, have a holster that is universal and hooks onto the light. I have one universal holster, and the problem is, while that it does work, it's terrible, right? So I wouldn't actually carry a gun with that. Like, I have an open holster that I've cut, so that if I'm, say, testing another gun for review, I just have a physical holster for it that technically works, but it's not something that I would ever carry in. And Hop's done videos on them. Other people have done videos on them. They just aren't that great. So going out of your way to spend, $60, $80, $100 more on a holster that's like mediocre for a lot of different guns. I have one, again, that I've modified specifically for the purposes of filming videos. which is not the correct application for the actual buyer of these products, right? I do it because I'm stupid and I make videos on stuff. For you, though, not a good idea to get a subpar holster. Probably not for a P320, says Magic Prepper. Yeah, again, I just don't think it's that great of an idea to do that. Magic Prepper says, I can't remember the exact issue, but there have been discussions around a bad striker reset spring, leaving the firing pin protruded, allowing for a possible slam fire. That is interesting. I'm trying to remember. I have had a slam fire in a Glock. I've had a slam fire in a Glock before. And it was a aftermarket firing pin unit thing in that I got in a kit somewhere. And it was protruding when the slide went home, and it did have a slam fire. So I have seen that happen before. Gary is takeover. Yeah, Will W says the Alien Gear Omnivore is a terrible holster. Rattles worse than my 2000 Honda Accord. I have the Alien Gear, their Rapid Force holster. I actually like that, but it only fits a Glock. The holster that I've modified to fit multiple handguns purely for video purposes is a Blackhawk L2D level 2 holster that I chopped the top off of. And if you look at it at the inside, it's just a gaping hole. It's just a gaping hole that you put a handgun in with a TLR1 and it holds onto it that way. But again, I would never actually use that for a realistic application, just for something to film videos with.
That'd be cool.
Joey says they're
used it for suppressors. So that'd be a pretty cool suppressor holster.
Yeah, it actually would work for suppressors now that you mention it, but handgun suppressors are kind of a meme. I would buy a PCC can, like a 9mm can for PCCs, but I don't think I would ever buy a dedicated handgun can.
No, here's what you got to do. Here's what you got to do, right? You take you get a Ruger Mark IV 2245, the tactical model, put your TLR7 on it, put a Silencer Co. Sparrow or whatever. Right. There you go. That is an excellent carry gun for shooting things in South Dakota. I don't know what you'd be shooting in South Dakota, but it'd be quiet.
Rabbits.
And that's the point. Yeah.
Lots and lots of rabbits out here.
Well, I've seen some of the jackrabbits out there. You're definitely not going to kill one with a 22. Need something bigger for that.
I mean, they're everywhere out here. They're like bugs. They're everywhere out here. I can't walk outside without seeing like 2 or 3. Like that's how bad awesome. It is. Yeah. I don't know how much the farmers like it, but they are everywhere. Joey says there have been a lot of issues with the M17/M18 series. I was around for agency testing of the M17/18 and M18 magazines would explode out of the bottom. These were 357 SIG handguns. Is 357 SIG still a thing that people are pushing? Because I'm not sure how much. I never see them ever. Other than one that. Do you remember there was that one church shooting where the where the elder he shot that guy who came in with the 357 SIG?
You pronounced it wrong.
Blackhawk. Blackhawk. Okay. It has exclamation points. Paul Harrell made this important point. Yes, he did. I remember his videos on that. Yes, the jackalopes that are out here. Edmund, yeah, so the that is for... Where are we looking at? There was another video. It was the... Trying to find where the guy mentioned it. But apparently there's an actual SIG mechanic guy who went through and actually, in much more detail, went through how these things would actually go up. And Matt House says that he likes bottleneck cartridges. The thing with bottleneck cartridges in handguns is that because you're...
So John just dropped out here, so I'm going to take over. Jack Wilson used a SIG P226, I believe. So that was hammer fired, and hammer fired is supreme. And bottleneck cartridges and pistols are also great. So,
well, before I kicked myself there, I hit the back button on my mouse and my Logitech G502, and it kicked me out of the stream. So sorry about that. But what I was going to say about bottlenecked cartridges is, while I get the appeal of trying to get more power and velocity out of a handgun, because you are limited by trying to load a magazine into the grip of the handgun, you're never going to get enough powder most of the time to accelerate a 30 caliber projectile, somewhere around there, like the 30 Super or 5.7 or 22 TCM. You're never going to get enough powder behind a light enough projectile for it to do rifle things. So the best you can hope for is like the 5.7, where in some cases you can penetrate some armor out of like a 5-inch barrel. But at the end of the day, a lot of the bottlenecked cartridges, it's like, hey, you got an extra 50 or 100 FPS. And it's like, well, what difference does that make on target? With a handgun, nothing. It still pokes a 9mm hole, a 30 caliber hole, and at best you get a slightly flatter trajectory. You get a tiny bit of expansion, but you're already getting expansion depending on your bullet selection. The most important thing with handguns is what allows you to get the most capacity with the least recoil, and that's about it. So 9mm usually does that. It has enough effectiveness, not particularly effective, but no handgun round really is. It's very easy to control, comparatively speaking, and you can get a lot of capacity. Big bottleneck got to him, that's right. Right as I go off on bottleneck cartridges and handguns.
I mean, it's not
negligent
quite as
disconnect.
reliable.
Damn it.
It's not quite as reliable as every time I go off on Bill.
Yeah. Cuts your internet. I don't even have any problem with the 357 SIG cartridge, other than it's like 10 to 15% faster than a 9mm, I want to say. But again, you don't get anything with that extra velocity. And again, it's more expensive and it has like slightly more recoil. So again, it's just, you're trying to do a lot with very little space because again, you're still limited by handgun magazines and handgun grips. So until that solution, until there's a fix for that problem, I don't think you're going to really see any crazy tech in handguns. Realistically, how big is the difference between defense hollow points and FMJs in something like a 9mm? In terms of terminal effectiveness, shot placement is still going to matter more than anything. But importantly, hollow points, in theory, will have less penetration. And because depending on where you hit in the human body with a 9mm ball, you can get over penetration pretty easily, which means that even if you hit your target, that projectile might travel beyond them and hit something else. Whereas hollow points, in theory, should transfer more of their energy to target, which has the byproduct of being slightly more terminally effective and also hopefully having less energy on the other side if they even make it through. So I would always recommend carrying hollow points, even if there isn't really that big of a difference in terminal effect. Again, because if you shoot at the right spot with a handgun, which is what you're going to have to do, and not only are you going to have to do it once, but you're probably going to have to do it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times to get the effect that you want. Again, the main problem there is going to be over penetration with 9mm. And so to reduce that and to get slightly more terminal effectiveness, use a hollow point of your favorite type. Look up gel testing with your specific load that you want to test with your specific barrel length and go from there. That's about the best that we can do without testing your individual batch of ammo with your specific handgun in gel and in different mediums to see what actually performs the best for you. Yeah, again, then there are like specialty stuff like 7.5 FK Bruno, but even then, it's still not doing what a intermediate rifle round does. And then you get the byproduct of now you have a huge heavy gun. It's incredibly expensive. While it is better than most handgun rounds, it's still not doing what rifles do. And the Deagle is the same thing.
Have you ever played with a Bruno though?
I'm sure they're great handguns. I would love to have one. They actually make one that comes with the 9mm conversion kit, and that would be the one to shoot because then it would at least in theory shouldn't have much recoil.
I think it was a 10 mil Bruno that came into the gun shop, and I got to put my hands all over it. Oh my god, it's like it's on.
Was it the
glass.
field or the more expensive model? Because I know they have 2 different models.
I'm not sure. I don't remember. As I said, I think it was a 10 mil. It wasn't the 7.5.
Okay. Yeah, but even 10 mil, 10 mil, there are handguns that can have different applications. For instance, bear country type stuff. This is very, very niche, but like lead cast bullets or hard cast bullets that have specifically a lot of penetration, which you're going to need if you're trying to use it on something that requires that sort of thing, like bear country. But again, that is very interesting. Right. Yeah, and again, that's a very special consideration. You are the 0.1%. He says, I live in medium-sized black bear country. I forgot to tell you this, but I saw a black bear when I was up in your neck of the woods. When I was driving up to your place, there was a black bear that ran across the road in front of me.
Was that over by the post office?
It was like 5 minutes away from your place, so I don't remember exactly where it was at, but it was...
Oh, okay.
It was
we've had
close to your place.
We've had a big one that was terrorizing people's pets.
Mm-hmm.
Not eating anything, just
it wasn't huge, but yeah,
jerk.
it was a decent sized guy.
It's awesome.
Yeah, he says I'm not carrying 10 millimeters, so 147 plus P HSTs in a 4+ inch barrel for yard work.
So,
all right,
last note on bears and pistols. If you're interested in bear defense at all, Sioux Outdoor Adventures is a great channel. Dude's up in Alaska. Grizzlies are a thing up there. The guy recommends a Glock 29. I think that's the short 10 mil, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Glock 29. Glock 29 with hard cast bullets for bear defense.
Now I'm interested. Why wouldn't he just go with the full size Glock for 10 millimeter?
Because you're going to carry a Glock 29.
Oh, like that was his carry gun, not like an outdoors type thing.
I mean, like when you're outdoors, when you're outdoors and you're in Alaska, the higher likelihood that you're going to see a bear, and you're more likely to carry the smaller gun than the bigger one. So
okay. Well, I know a lot of people, like my brother, he carries, when he was doing that sort of thing, he carried a 357 revolver, but he carried it in a chest harness. So it was always just sitting right on his chest. So again, if it was something like external carry, I would imagine you would just buy or carry the bigger one. But if it's actually like a concealed carry EDC type thing, I guess that would make sense. Mr. Doublefield says he would have liked to buy one, referring to the FK Bruno. The polymer one was only $2,000 and it came with 3 calibers. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting system. A lot of YouTubers got to play around with it. Do you remember when that was going on and like every YouTuber like every week would have a video of it because it kept going around to different people?
Oh, yeah. That was awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like a cool concept, so we did get a lot of good content out of it.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, now in my neck of the woods, this is our last thing for the night. We actually had something interesting happen this morning in Sioux Falls. So Sioux Falls is about 45 minutes east of where I live, and there was a hostage situation at about 3 o'clock this morning at a gas station. So we'll go ahead and read this article by the SDPB. Authorities said a hostage situation at downtown Sioux Falls gas station ended with police fatally shooting the suspect. Police Chief John Thum said that someone at the business called 911 early Wednesday saying there was an individual with a gun. During that call, an officer who was on break walked into the building unaware of the situation inside. So this was just a officer just happened to take a break, go into this gas station. Here in South Dakota, we have a lot of really awesome gas stations. This was actually at a Get and Go that I've been in. So just on his break and happened to walk inside right into the middle of a robbery. This Thumb said the suspect fired at the officer. The officer returned fire and took safety behind his patrol vehicle. So he exits the store, he's outside. The suspect then allegedly took hostages. A large law enforcement presence responded, including a SWAT team. Thumb said that Thum said that they attempted peaceful negotiations but failed. A Minnehaha County Sheriff's Office deputy shot and killed the suspect with a sniper rifle. Now, in another article that I was reading, they claim that it was... Exactly. Matt House says, what a terrible number for an emergency. It reminds me of that tragedy. Yeah, I know. Little slip there. Now, in another article that I was reading, it was a SWAT team member that took the shot with his rifle, not a sheriff's office deputy. So could be one or the other. Not sure exactly who took the shot. Police then rescued the hostages. No one besides the suspect was injured. Law enforcement then entered the building and rescued the hostages. Thum said that considering the situation, the response team was successful. I just want to highlight again, great cooperation between the Sioux Falls Police Department and Minnehaha County Sheriff's Office. When a request for aid goes out or assistance goes out, we respond unified and well together to really bring about resolutions. Obviously, we seek peaceful
So everybody email the Minnehaha Sheriff and tell them.
Tell them what? You cut out there for a second. You literally said nothing.
Okay. I said everybody email the Minnehaha Sheriff Department and tell them to have John make their uppers from now on.
No, don't do that. I actually don't. I don't work with police departments, but that's just a personal thing. Yeah. So it was. So this article from the AP says law enforcement found a hostage hiding in a bathroom and another one had been near the suspect. Thum said another hostage had already fled. So there was multiple people inside of the building. Backup arrived, Thum said, and a mini county sheriff's deputy and SWAT officer. So one or the other used a sniper rifle to shoot the suspect. Now, interestingly enough, actually, I didn't even share that article, but that was here, yeah. So you can see here that the sheriff's deputy and SWAT officer used a sniper rifle to shoot the suspect. And that was this morning at about 3 o'clock. Now, interestingly enough, this is where this is. So it's kind of perfectly in the middle of Sioux Falls. South Dakota is incredibly empty, so there's really only a couple big cities in it, or big-ish cities. And this area right here is right where the shooting took place, right in this get and go, the corner of 14th and Minnehaha, or Minnesota, I want to say. And we can go ahead and move over here. So this specific get and go only has windows on the front. So again, about 3 o'clock this morning, today, the officer randomly walked inside during a robbery. He was not aware of it at the time. The suspect on the inside shot at him. The officer leaves, goes back to his patrol car, which is probably either at the pumps or at the upfront area, probably back at the pumps. A large armed response comes, and they try to negotiate with the guy unsuccessfully, and at some point, the officers decide to shoot him. One of the officers, again, there's no windows on the sides or the back of the building, it's just the front. So the SWAT officer or the deputy that actually took the shot likely took it from inside of 50 yards with, again, their sniper rifle, which might have just been as simple as the police officer's carbine. But again, it was a single shot that was fired after the initial encounter, and he was the only guy that was injured. And again, I've actually been to this gas station. I've been inside of it. It was just kind of an interesting situation that happened literally this morning. Joey says he was probably part-time SWAT, so he was technically both a sheriff's deputy and a SWAT team member. That's possible. Yeah.
So is Sioux Falls as bad as some of the places up here?
No, not at all. Nope, no comparison. So, for instance, I used to live in an hour north of Portland and about an hour south of Tacoma. And my first job out of college was inside-outside sales, so I would have to drive through Portland like all the time, every week, basically. And Sioux Falls, by comparison to Portland, to Tacoma, to Olympia, to Seattle, is immaculate. Now, there are still bad elements within Sioux Falls, I would say, and it's kind of getting worse as well. But by and large, it is a very nice, very clean city for a city of its size. So, not perfect by any means, but quite a bit better. Yeah, Magic says, there are some weird people around Sioux Falls. You never know who you might run into. Yes. What's funny is I actually ran into Magic at a gun store in Sioux Falls randomly. He was just passing through, and I was actually picking up the rifle on the wall back there from Gary's gun shop, and we just completely randomly happened to be we just happened to be in the same gun store at the same time. So that was quite a quite a funny occurrence. Will W says LPVO turns a carbine into a sniper rifle, right? Yeah, I'm not going to get caught up on definitions. Do you remember when? No, this was pretty recent actually. Was it AK Operators Union? The guy was like going off on people for saying people were or were not snipers or sniper rifles because I believe it was in his mind you have to specifically go to a sniper school in the military, which is how he got his certification.
I mean, I agree with that. The sniper is a job. It's not a.
Sure.
It's not a.
But I mean, there's a colloquial understanding of it, right?
I don't even watch AK Operators Union. It's just
I don't either. I don't own AKs or do anything with them, but I just know it was a bunch of people. He was clowning on other people, and then other people started clowning on him for his different takes and whatnot. Yeah, but as far as that goes, you got to remember this was, while whatever the shot was taken with, it was like at a maximum. If he was pushed up all the way across the street, which he probably wasn't, they're probably quite a bit closer than that. Even from all the way across the street, it was at a maximum of 75 yards,
which is about average for most police snipers.
Yeah, exactly. So what you need there is a very high level of precision. Now, interestingly, unless the door was propped open or one of the windows was already shot out, I haven't been to it. I guess I could have actually driven to it today. I could have driven to it and taken some pictures and see like if windows were shot out or anything. Because if you're shooting through glass and say the guy is like 10 yards behind glass, maybe you wouldn't want to use 5.56 in that case, especially for a single shot. Especially if he has hostages, maybe then you would actually want or require a higher caliber just so that you don't have any chance for deflection. Because, I mean, that does complicate things quite a bit. So maybe that's a circumstance where the good old 308 makes a lot more sense.
I mean, most situations 308 makes a lot of sense, but whatever. We're not going to get into that. We already did that. I lost.
Well, no. 308 made it to no. You're talking about 7mm, right?
No, I was talking about 308.
Yeah, 308 made it all the way to 5.5. Made it all the way up to 5.56. But of course, 5.56 is going to win for most things. But
yeah.
Plot twist: someone carrying a P320 a mile away took out the hostage taker when he had an ND when multiple parts failed at the same time. Yep. And then the perpetrator's family is now going to sue SIG again because the negligent discharge or the negligent design of the firearm led to the death of their dearly beloved. All right, well, that's about all that I have for tonight, Gary. Did you have anything else specifically that you wanted to go over?
Next week, y'all have been hounding me to get Hop and Brass Facts on. And I'm not going to be available next week, but Hop said he might. So
it's very possible. We'll have to figure out what we're doing next week. Worst comes to worst, I'll do a solo stream. Not a problem.
Worst comes to worst, I will make sure that there is a carbine stocks tier list, so that so that John and Hop can do a nice little tier list together.
I don't even have strong enough opinions on stocks to do a tier list. I just use whichever ones are comfy and have a QD socket. That's my thing.
So Hop has strong enough opinions for both of you. This sounds
he does.
perfect.
You can just let him go on that sort of stuff, though. Ben Bowditch says Washington is losing all of the good gun guys. John, have you gone to Mount Rushmore yet? Yes, I have. It's very beautiful. I wish I lived on the western side of the state. Unfortunately, I live on the worst part of the state, which is the east side, near Sioux Falls. Andrew Vachon for $1.99. Thank you very much, sir. He says, we finally found a use for 308. I hate that caliber. I don't hate 308. It has uses. Again, whenever you need a heavier projectile in a medium-sized platform, it works. Now, personally, I would prefer 6.5 Creedmoor or some of the other cartridges that are a little bit more ballistically efficient, let's say. Magic Pepper says, watch for CIA distributed P320s throughout poor neighborhoods here in the future. Yeah, exactly. Right now, it's all, what is it right now? P80s. You see lots of P80s, quote-unquote ghost guns floating around in inner cities and whatnot. Pretty sure those are all China switches. Yeah. Yep. Switches are everywhere. See, actually, that would be terrible because I think I hate the mil-spec stock the most, which I think would get me some hate because I know a lot of people have somewhat fond memories of using it. Yeah, exactly. Mr. Duffield says, same. I don't care what stock I'm using as long as it's comfortable. Yeah, it can't be too heavy. It needs to have like a fairly good lockup. It needs to have a QD cup for my sling. And that's about it. All right. So next week, let's see. For videos coming up, I have some stuff on the LMT behind me. LCAN, ACOG, some other stuff. A project actually that Hop forced me to do, which is a 11.5 MIDI that is only for suppressed shooting, which you guys did see a little bit in the intro. That's going to be coming out in the next week or so. But with all that out of the way, guys, I think that is everything that we have for tonight. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and we will see you in the next one.